Next on the news.
It's a humanitarian tragedy, and it's something that obviously we're working to deal with.
Shock and heartbreak as dozens of migrants are found dead in a tractor trailer in Texas in a suspected smuggling operation. Also,
the law is a teacher, and Roe taught the wrong lesson.
The legalities of the Supreme Court ruling on Roe. We'll speak with an attorney in the Public Policy Office at the Archdiocese of New York. Plus, how low enrollment is leading to teacher layoffs in New York City schools.
I know I have to help my brother so he can go to college and he can live his dream.
It's true love among siblings, the lengths two younger sisters are going to get their brother to his dream college. I'm Christine Persichetti. Current News starts right now. Three people are in custody after what's being called one of the deadliest incidents in recent years for migrants at the southern border. They were found inside a sweltering tractor trailer in an area of Texas known as a place for migrant drop-offs. At least 50 migrants found dead in San Antonio Monday, trapped inside this 18-wheeler with temperatures around 100 degrees.
Who had families, who were likely trying to find a better life.
More than a dozen others were taken to the hospital. Some of the victims are children.
They were suffering from heat stroke, heat exhaustion, no signs of water in the vehicle. There was no visible working AC unit on that rig.
Police were called to the scene after a worker found the trailer with its doors partially open.
The plight of migrants seeking refuge is always a humanitarian crisis, but tonight we are dealing with a horrific human tragedy.
A tragedy that's part of a growing and horrific trend.
We know that there's been increasing volumes over the last 6 months, 12 months.
Officials count more than 14,000 search and rescues along the U.S.-Mexico border since October. That's about 1,000 more than the total for the last fiscal year, with more than 3 months to go. Texas Governor Greg Abbott blames the president, tweeting, "These deaths are on Biden. They are a result of his deadly open border policies. They show the deadly consequences of his refusal to enforce the law." President Biden, on the other hand, blames human smuggling networks, saying the incident underscores the need to go after criminal trafficking rings.
Pray for the deceased, the ailing, the families, and we hope that those responsible for putting these people in such humane conditions are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Pope Francis is also asking people to pray. In a tweet, the Holy Father said, "Let us pray together for these brothers and sisters who died following their hope of a better life. And for ourselves, may the Lord might open our hearts so these misfortunes never happen again." The city of San Antonio called Catholic Charities after the discovery. Representatives went to the scene to help the immigrants who survived. Also offering prayers, San Antonio Archbishop Gustavo Garcia Siller, who released a statement saying, "I urge all in the Archdiocese to unite in solidarity as these brothers and sisters are members of our family. We also ask the Lord for mercy and understanding in this time of trial and suffering, still remembering our beloved in Uvalde. Give us the strength, Lord, to do your will. Help us, O God." Sadly, Monday's heartbreaking discovery was not an isolated incident. In 2017, 10 migrants died after being trapped in a truck parked at a Walmart in San Antonio. In 2012, a pickup truck crammed with more than 20 migrants struck 2 trees near Goliad, Texas, killing 15. And in 2003, the bodies of 19 migrants were found in a sweltering truck in Victoria, Texas. A decision is looming this week from the Supreme Court on the controversial Remain in Mexico policy. The Biden administration has been trying to lift the Trump-era policy that requires many asylum seekers to stay in Mexico while they wait for hearings, which could take months or years. But lower courts have ordered the administration to reinstate the policy after challenges in Texas and Missouri. New York Cardinal Timothy Dolan is praising a recent Supreme Court win for a football coach in Washington State who was placed on leave for praying midfield after games. The justices said the prayers amounted to private speech protected under the First Amendment. His Eminence, who also heads the U.S. Bishops Committee for Religious Liberty, said in a statement, "The freedom to pray is essential to the moral duty all people possess toward the truth. The court's decision to prevent the forced expulsion of voluntary prayer from public life is a major victory for all Americans who wish to discover and live the truth." A historic Catholic church in West Virginia destroyed in a suspected arson attack. Fire officials say St. Coleman Catholic Church in Raleigh County burned to the ground on Sunday in a fire that's being called suspicious. No arrests have been made. It was also known as the Little Catholic Church on Irish Mountain, and the original structure dates back to the late 1800s. It's listed on the National Register of Historic Places. New details now emerging about that Catholic church in Virginia targeted by vandals after the Supreme Court decision on Roe v. Wade. This as the faithful work to clean up the mess. Nick Minnock has the latest.
In the early morning hours on Sunday, parishioners called 911 as smoke became visible at St. John Newman Catholic Community Church in Reston, Virginia. Billy Atwell is with the Diocese of Arlington.
The mulch was set on fire and there was spray paint on the side of the walls. It's deeply concerning to people in the St. John Newman community, I think, and to the community around that parish as well.
Graffiti was found on the front sign of the parish and several walls on the church building. Police are now investigating who did this. A parishioner who specializes in removing paint cleaned up the graffiti just in time for a funeral.
With things being so politically heated, I think it's very unsettling that people would discriminate against the church because of its beliefs. You know, vandalism is upsetting no matter who it happens to, but when it happens because of someone's religious faith, it takes on a whole new context.
But even though the graffiti is gone, many in the community are still nervous about what could happen in the future.
The community of St. John Newman is that they're people of great faith. So there's a tension, I think a nervous tension about it, because you don't know if it could happen again. But they're people of hope, they're people of joy. So this situation is not overshadowing that reality because it's deeply a part of our faith. It's actually intrinsic to our faith to be people of hope and joy and to trust in the Lord. And so, yes, there will be challenges, but we'll get through them.
That was Nick Minnock reporting. Investigators are reviewing the church's surveillance video for clues on who is responsible. And our coverage of a post-Roe America continues. Currents News will break down the legalities of the ruling later in this newscast with Alexis Cara Tracy, an attorney in the Public Policy Office at the Archdiocese of New York. That's coming up later in this newscast. New York City schools are being warned that they must make big budget cuts. That's because there's been a big drop in enrollment. Nearly 77% of city schools have seen a decline. Those numbers have been steadily declining for years, but budgets remained largely untouched with help from federal aid. Hundreds of teachers are now being let go due to the cuts, but the New York City Schools Chancellor pledged most, if not all, of those teachers will find a position before the next school year. This as the city unveiled 14 new superintendents Monday. All 45 district bosses were asked to reapply for their roles as part of a citywide shakeup meant to expand their responsibilities. High-ranking officials and borough-based support offices were cut, shifting their responsibilities to the superintendent's offices. About 30 superintendents kept their positions and more than a dozen new leaders took the helm. The Diocese of Brooklyn's new superintendent is starting this Friday. Deacon Kevin McCormick, who was the principal of Zavarian High School in Bay Ridge for 15 years, will take over the position from Dr. Thomas Chadzuko, who served Diocese of Brooklyn schools for almost 2 decades. Following his appointment by Brooklyn Bishop Robert Brennan, Currents News spoke to Deacon McCormick about his new job and the importance of technology in the classroom.
We need the foundation of education, but the way we do it now is radically different. That doesn't mean we lose the foundation, but it means that we embrace the new. We've been using iPads in our schools since 2011, and when the COVID hit, our kids never missed a beat. Our faculty was right there with them. We have to see technology as a tool, not as some kind of demagogue, but a tool that'll help our kids be able to encounter the world that they're going to inherit.
Deacon McCormick says his priority in this new job is to bring the gospel to as many children as he possibly can. An investigation is underway after an Amtrak train derailed when it hit a dump truck at a crossing in rural Missouri Monday. But thankfully, a troop of Boy Scouts from Wisconsin were also on board and played a major role in the rescue operations. The group of young boys between the ages of 13 and 17 broke windows, helped people off the train, and even tried to save the truck driver, who later died.
Scouts are highly trained. They would have received advanced first aid training prior to going, including their adult leaders would have had people with wilderness first aid certification.
The troop was returning home from a backpacking trip in New Mexico. They say they are shaken from the experience, but are glad they were able to help. But sadly, the incident claimed the lives of at least 4 people and injured dozens more. Federal authorities are now on the scene investigating. Gloria Pasmino spoke with some passengers and has the latest.
Chaos and confusion in the moments after a Chicago-bound Amtrak train derails.
Boom. My side of the window is now the floor, and the other side of the train is now the ceiling.
Passenger Larry Brown describes the struggle to escape.
Couldn't go through the regular doors. Those were all blocked off, so we took the strips off the windows and were able to climb out through the top.
A crew member can be heard checking on passengers as they climb out of the wreckage. The crash happened about 100 miles northeast of Kansas City. Amtrak says about 275 passengers and 12 crew members were on board when the train plowed into a dump truck, sending 8 cars and 2 locomotives off the rails.
It's an uncontrolled crossbuck intersection on a gravel road, so no lights, no electronic control devices, things such as that.
As the National Transportation Safety Board team begins its investigation, the survivors count their blessings.
You know, I look at the people that were bleeding and injured, and then I looked at my kids, and I looked at my wife, and I said, there's no way that we got out of this without God.
In Mendon, Missouri, I'm Gloria Pasmino.
The NYPD says a rise in thefts is fueling the spike in subway crime. New police department numbers show that there were 219 total felonies in the subways in May. They included 108 grand larcenies, 55 felony assaults, and 54 robberies. Police say purses, neck chains, phones, and other handheld items are at greatest risk of theft. It was a joyous celebration. The parish at Our Lady of Czestochowa and St. Casimir marked their 125th anniversary Sunday, together with the 100th anniversary of their church building. The big day kicked off with a special mass honoring the parish's Polish roots. The parish was founded in 1896 as a mission church for Polish immigrants in Brooklyn. In 1980, the church merged with the parish family of St. Casimir, and since then, they have continued to provide outstanding ministry to the Sunset Park community. Congrats to them. There's a lot more news headed your way. After reluctantly bowing out of his trip to Africa, Pope Francis makes a decision about who will go in his place. And Afghanistan struggling after last week's deadly earthquake, how the U.S. is helping out. Plus, keeping tourists moving and temperatures low, the famous Notre Dame Cathedral has some redesigns in mind. It's been one of our top stories, the Supreme Court's historic decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. For more information on the legalities of the ruling, we're joined by Alexis Cara-Tracy, an attorney in the Public Policy Office at the Archdiocese of New York. Alexis, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
So before Roe v. Wade in 1973, the states determined the legality of abortion. And even after the 1973 ruling, it was never a constitutional right, but yet so many people still call it a constitutional right. Why is that? What's going on?
Well, I think it comes back to the law is a teacher, and Roe taught the wrong lesson in the sense that Roe considered abortion to be a constitutional right, and that kind of got into the psyche of society. To people now all of a sudden started believing that abortion really was a constitutional right. And I think, over the past 50 years, it's kind of just been taken for granted until now, until the Dobbs decision, which essentially said that no, Roe is incorrect and that the Constitution does not confer a right to abortion either implicitly or explicitly.
Yeah, Justice Alito said it wasn't even in the Constitution. The word is not in the Constitution.
Exactly.
So now again, it's up to the states. And so it goes to New York, and in New York State, you know, they're trying to do anything to keep abortion legal. So what do we do now to change that?
Well, of course, I think it's a battle over changing hearts, changing minds, changing the culture. But I also think it's important to expose how radical the abortion law is in New York. So, for example, if Reproductive Health Act, you know, abortion is essentially legal through 24 weeks of pregnancy, and even afterwards, if needed for some sort of ambiguous definition of health, which is not necessarily to save the life of the mother, but for any other such health-associated reason. So I think if people really understood, even pro-choice people, how radical the abortion law is in New York, they would start to have some second thoughts.
Wow, interesting. And there's been a lot of misinformation since this ruling. Some women are worried that, you know, hey, what if I have an ectopic pregnancy? What if I have a miscarriage? Are the medical professionals allowed to help me? Can you clear that up for us?
Sure. Well, that's a common now misconception, I think, as Catholics, but as people in general in America, we should be very careful to sort out misinformation. Now, and I think the church is actually helpful in this because the church really specifies what's a direct abortion. If you look at the Catechism, Section 2271, yes, I'm a nerd that knows all of that.
That's okay,
it talks about a direct abortion. It talks about an act that intentionally, directly ends the life of an unborn child.
Right.
Whereas a miscarriage is something completely different. In the case of a miscarriage, which again, very sad, terrible, terrible situation, the child unfortunately has already passed away.
Right.
Now, if we look at the Texas law, people don't always know this, the Texas abortion law, they actually define what abortion is, but then they list a series of carve-outs, and they specifically say, you know, any type of act to remove an unborn child due to a miscarriage is not an abortion, so obviously it would not be illegal. And then similarly with an ectopic pregnancy, which again is another very, very sad situation where, you know, a pregnancy is essentially outside of, you know, the uterus, and in that case, a child may pass away, but it's not a direct act, it's not an abortion. But of course, there are people that, you know, say, well, oh my gosh, now all these medical procedures aren't going to be allowed, this is terrible for women, and that's just not the case.
Good, so they don't have to worry about that. One, really quickly, a lot of pro-abortion people say it's a benefit, that abortion is a benefit, it's a need. Does society need to change here?
Yes, I think society needs to change, but I think also there needs to be more of an understanding of women's health, women's fertility, the ability to have a child as something good, as something positive. You know, a pregnancy, a child is not a disease. That's something good that needs to be embraced. And I think unfortunately we have a paradigm in society where it's, okay, mother against child, or if you have a child, you can't excel in your career, you can't, you know, succeed. And that's just unfortunate and totally not true.
Absolutely so true. Alexis Tracy, an attorney with the Archdiocese of New York, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
While America has been celebrating a win for life, the church has been seeing one of the deadliest weeks for Catholic priests and religious in recent years. In the past 7 days, there has been one violent murder every 33 hours. They include the killing of 2 Jesuit priests in Mexico last Wednesday, the killing of a nun who served in Haiti on Sunday, and the deaths of 2 more priests in Nigeria over the weekend. Pope Francis has decided to send the Vatican Secretary of State in his place to the Democratic Republic of Congo and South Sudan. The Holy Father was forced to postpone his trip due to knee pain at the insistence of his doctors. Cardinal Pietro Parolin will leave for the Pope's week-long journey this Friday. Pope Francis will also celebrate a Mass July 3rd with members of Rome's Congolese community. President Biden has landed in Madrid for a NATO summit. He'll meet with fellow leaders of NATO about plans to beef up U.S. presence in Europe. This comes amid a growing concern about the alliance's resolve in the face of the war in Ukraine. The president wants to add more Navy destroyers to the region to help bolster NATO allies. The U.S. announced it'll give financial help to Afghanistan as it deals with the aftermath of a massive earthquake. On Tuesday, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the U.S. will donate nearly $55 million in humanitarian assistance. The money will be used to provide shelter, blankets, clothes, and solar lamps. At least 1,000 people were killed in last week's quake, and about 1,500 were injured. As the reconstruction of the Cathedral of Notre Dame continues, there are new details about changes to benefit tourists. The area around the famed Parish Cathedral will be opened up toward the Seine River to help the flow of millions of visitors. The new design also includes a cooling system to provide relief at the square in front of the cathedral. Notre Dame was ravaged by a devastating fire in 2019. There are plans to partially reopen it in 2024. The Vatican's newspaper is starting a new monthly edition that will give a voice to the poor and homeless. Each edition of the street paper will be organized around a theme, including editorials by people living on the streets. The first edition of the Street Observer comes out June 29th and will be distributed to pilgrims in St. Peter's Square after the Pope's Angelus. All proceeds will go toward the poor and the homeless, assisting with the production of the paper. Still to come on Currents News, they knew right away something was wrong with their dad, how two 10-year-old sons jumped into action and saved his life. And forget about sibling rivalry, what two younger sisters are doing to help their brother go to college. An Alabama man overwhelmed with pride after his sons saved him from drowning last week. Brad Hassig was swimming in his pool along with his two 10-year-old boys, Bryden and Christian, and their friend Sam. But while Brad was underwater, the three boys noticed something was wrong and sprung into action.
I could see he was shaking a bunch, and then he just laid on his side. I told Bryden, Dad's not okay.
There's no way physically that they should have been able to do what they did. They hadn't had training to do what they did, to act as fast, to run as fast, as far, to know to flag down somebody to call 911 while the other one's doing CPR on you. I mean, it's a God thing.
Wow. Bryden and Christian say the moment their dad returned from the hospital was the happiest moment in their lives. And it's all about sibling love. Two Minnesota sisters are selling their precious belongings to help their older brother. It's a big sacrifice to help him achieve his dream of attending a historically Black Catholic university. Reg Chapman has the details of this heartwarming story.
Under the blue tent off 36th Avenue in Robbinsdale are two young ladies on a mission.
Our brother, he needs to go to college down in Louisiana, and it's really expensive. It's more expensive than you would think.
Stephanie and Deja Lewis gave up all that's important to them.
Then come over here, we got movies. We got the new ones, Free Guy, Turning Red, Big Hero 6, Wrong Gone Wrong.
To sell, so they can raise money to help send big brother Ty to college.
I know what we can do. We can have a garage sale, and then she's like, well, we can do a lemonade stand too. So now we're just doing both to earn some extra money to kind of get him there.
We just took everything. We were like, he has to go to college. We got to do it.
Ty graduated from Robbinsdale Cooper High School and has been accepted to study computer science at Xavier University in Louisiana.
It was the best option I had. It's one of the best HBCUs out there, so I decided to go there.
His biggest concern, paying for it all. He's grateful for help from his little sisters.
It's a good feeling to know that they care. I mean, that's like the main thing.
People stopping by happy to support the cause.
I'm really proud. He graduated high school, he got through all his grades. I know I have to help my brother so he can go to college and he can live his dream as he wants to.
No one is more proud of what's going on than Mom and Grandma.
Kids, go back and forth, and argue and mess with each other, but they always have looked up to, their older brother. And so they've always just been really sweet girls that always, wanted to help.
Proving the bond between brothers and sisters is strong.
I hope they raise a lot of money. That was Reg Chapman reporting. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.